Good afternoon, folks. So today I'm going to talk about GatsbyJS. And so how many of you have heard about Gatsby? Oh, I thought there'd be more. Oh, anyways, just two of you. How many of you have heard about GraphQL? Okay, that's a relief. Yeah, because the more you know about it, the less I have to explain, right? So, all right. So GatsbyJS is a tool by which you can make optimized websites. You know, the tool can fetch data from anywhere, and it processes the data and using React, and it outputs optimized websites using the PRPL pattern. So you don't have to worry about what PRPL is. It's basically a way to have websites which are very, very performant. Right? So that's what GatsbyJS is. Now, why should we use GatsbyJS? We should use GatsbyJS is because it gives you very performant websites very easily. Right? I'm not going to talk about the performance part of GatsbyJS because there are a lot of talks on the internet about that already. You just need to Google it and you'll find that. What we'll do here is that we'll just try and learn a little bit about how GatsbyJS works. You know, we'll quickly implement something in GatsbyJS and see how it works. So this is what GatsbyJS is, right? GatsbyJS can pull data from anywhere. Anywhere means it could be a CMS system, it could be Markdowns, it could be from JSON, CSVs. This picture is from the GatsbyJS website, right? And it pulls data from anywhere, and it passes it to React components as props, and we get optimized websites, right? So that's really cool. What I found really awesome about Gatsby was the fact that it can pull data from anywhere, right? It can pull data anywhere from the cloud. So, and then it passes it to React, and it uses GraphQL, right? So the first time when I started working on Gatsby and figured out all these stuff in Gatsby, my mind started working overtime, and I just couldn't get it out of my mind. I mean, this is so cool, right? You can just pull data from anywhere in the cloud and put it into your React components, and out comes optimized websites, static websites for now, but we'll talk about that more later. And it kind of drove me a little crazy that I had to kind of have a vent, and I kind of wrote a blog post on that, right? I wrote a blog post on that, and I called it Templating Technology. And in this blog post, I wrote how by templating technology, which React has components and Gatsby pulls data from anywhere, it can change the world. And it was a relief after I got that out of my mind. And I sent it to a few friends of mine, very close friends of mine, and a few WhatsApp groups. And they all kind of responded in a similar way after reading my post, right? So they all responded something like this. So I was like, OK, we may not be able to change the world, but let's just build a blog, a website where we can blog. So that's what we'll do today. We'll just build a website to, make a blog. So, so the command to start with Gatsby, the main command for Gatsby is Gatsby new, right? Gatsby new, you have to load a Gatsby CLI, and that's a straightforward npm install of a Gatsby CLI. And once you install a Gatsby CLI, you need to invoke Gatsby new. Oh, thank you. Now, Gatsby new is nothing but git clone and an npm install. So what happens is that when you run Gatsby new, it basically, Gatsby has starter kits, right? And these starter kits, we do a git clone of the starter kit, and then we do an npm install of the starter kit. So for our demo here, what we'll do is I already made a starter kit, which is similar to the default Gatsby starter kit, and I will use that. We'll do a git clone on that and an npm install on that and take it from there. Sorry. Zoom in. Okay, is it visible? Is it visible? Yeah? Okay, so we'll first do a git clone. So I do a git clone of a starter kit which I made, which is similar to the starter kit which we have when we do a Gatsby new, right? The only difference in this starter kit which I have here is I got a few more, what do you call that, plugins, right? A plugin is basically a Node.js install file, which Gatsby, which has features which makes websites, which can, let's say, have image processing features, or you could use it to pull data from anywhere, right? And anybody can make a plugin. So there are some default Gatsby plugins, and I got a couple of extra Gatsby plugins inside this default starter kit, right? So we do git clone and an npm install. Okay. Oops. Okay, so while this is happening, so coming back to what you're talking about, that Gatsby can pull data from anywhere, right? So the way Gatsby does that is that it has certain plugins, the plugins that you talked about before. So we have certain plugins which are called source plugins, right? They're called Gatsby source plugins, which are used to source the data. And so for our blog post, what we're going to do is we're going to use, we have actually in the starter kit, we already have installed a plugin which is getting installed right now. That is the Gatsby source file system plugin. So what we're doing here is that we're saying we're going to get our data from the file system, right? Not from the cloud. Actually, getting from the cloud is easier. The file system is more complex, right? But just for as developers, we love to work on markdowns and stuff. So we'll do a blog which is based on markdowns here. So we will source our data from the file system, and that data will be markdowns, right? That's the first thing. So we install this. So the starter kit gets installed. The starter kit has the source plugin which can get data from the file system. And then we have another plugin installed in here, which is called the Gatsby Transformer Remark plugin, right? What this means, it sounds complicated, it's not. What it means is that this plugin will transform data, the remark data. What that basically means that, let me just come back. So there are two kinds of plugins in Gatsby. There are more, but two important ones we need to know is a Gatsby source plugin, which sources data, and a Gatsby transformer plugin. The Gatsby transformer plugin can transform the data which we source, right? Let's say from the cloud we pull down 10 image files, right? And we want to do some image processing on them. So we can have a plugin which is like a transformer plugin which can process those images, right? So in this case, what we have done is we installed a Gatsby file system, source file system plugin, and a transformer remark plugin. What that remark plugin does is it will go into the file system and check which are our markdown files. Remark is like a library for markdowns. Which are our markdown files, and it will process those files and create HTML files from them, right? So that's what it does. So let's get back here. Okay, so we did a git clone and an npm install till now, and next we do a Gatsby develop. Okay, there it goes. So Gatsby develop is a hot reloading for dev environment for hot reloading of Gatsby. So basically, it's like a npm run build or a npm start or whatever, right? So it's just so Gatsby develop. Now we'll have a website up and running. This is the default Gatsby website, and it's in a hot reloading manner, and it's available in localhost 8000. So let's see what's in there. I just open Chrome, and I take Chrome onto Chrome on here, the screen. Oops. Okay. Because this is in full screen mode. Now let's be better. Yep. Okay. So this is a very simple website. Just says, hello people, hi React people, welcome to your new Gatsby site, localhost 8000. So this is the default Gatsby starter kit, right? Now, what we do is we just take a look at a little easier for me. Can you hear me? Is it clear? Yep, is it clear? Because I just want to use both my hands and be a little faster this way. Okay. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're going into the directory we cloned. So if you look here, the list of files for Gatsby, we are interested in the src folder, right? That contains all our source files. So if we go into src folder and we take a look at what we have 3 folders in here. We're interested in the pages folder. So let's go into the pages folder and take a look here. Here if you see the index.js file, this actually contains what is there in our Gatsby website. No, that's can you hear me? Okay. Okay. No. All right. So, okay. So the index.js file is the one which gets rendered, right? So anything you change here, let's say welcome. Anything hi, let's say hi React people. Right? I just made it hi React people, and let's. Where is my browser? Here it is. Okay, here it goes. Where is it? Hi React people, right? So hot reloading. Hot reloading is enabled here. Okay, so now we want to make a blog site, and we just have like 10 minutes with this, so we need to be really fast, right? So let's do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a blog site with Markdown files. So I've already got the Markdown files ready for us, right? Just so that we can save time. So the files are right here on my file system. And so I got 4 files here. Let me just show you one of them and how it's structured. So if you look at the directory, I'm going to copy these files into our Gatsby system. Right now, this is in my. So here we have an index.md, and we have two images, right? So what is inside the index.md? Let's take a look very quickly. And it's important to know what's inside because we are going to be querying what's inside this file, right? So inside this file, if you see, there's basically a front matter in a Markdown, which has a title, and then it has an image name, this image name, and then there is some text, right, with Markdown syntax, right? So I've created 4 such files here, and I'm just going to copy these files into my Gatsby folders, right? So let's get back into our blog here. We go to source, pages, and we copy it here. So we do a copy -r. We have to go back really deep. And let's copy files. Copy everything here to this directory, and let's just name the directory Gomuk. Similarly, we'll copy the directory which is for Hamta. So these are just blog Markdown directories, and we'll name it here Hamta. Then we'll copy the next blog, which is Kuari Pass, and we just Kuari. And the last one, okay, let's leave the last one for now. Okay, so we just copied those files in here, and the next thing which we want to do is we want that this particular Markdown files which are there, we want to show a preview of that on our front page, right? So for that, if you remember, I mean, you should remember actually, in the index.js is where the front page is. So we want to modify this index.js such that it pulls the data from our Markdown and puts it in the front page, right? So I'm just going to stop our hot reloading server because we are changing the Gatsby data layer here. And then what I'm doing is, if you open the existing index.js, it just has a div with the h1 and then some p links. So I'm just going to instead copy another index.js which I have from before. This index.js, which is, which one do you want? We want the title one. Let's just call it index.js here. I'll show you what's inside this and what's different. Okay, I got this in here. And then let us restart our Gatsby server. And I think we should have everything going with this. As far as I remember, it should. Okay, so let us see. All right, so it did it, right? So it's able to go into the Markdown, pick up our titles, and put the titles here, right? What did we do for doing that? Is we did this. If you look at index.js, what we have in index.js is, and here comes GraphQL, right? So we have below our React component, we have a GraphQL query, right? And well, this is anybody who has worked with what was that? GraphQL. Okay, forget it. Okay, so if you notice here, we have this GraphQL query here. I'll show you what this query does, right? But essentially, what's happening in this index.js right now is that the Gatsby system is running this GraphQL query, taking the output of this GraphQL query, and passing it to this React component as a prop, right? And when we pass it out there, we just kind of whatever is there in the prop, we just print that prop, right? And that's where the title comes. But so I think the interesting thing is here is what's the output of the GraphQL query and what's the, those who are familiar with GraphQL will understand the syntax of this query. Those who aren't, it's pretty simple actually. So it will not take much for you to quickly grasp it. So Gatsby also gives us the graphical interface where we can actually go in and check what our data layer looks like, right? So if we enter the graphical interface, this is some old query, and let's put in the query here, which was there in index.js file, right? Let's put in that query here, and okay, so this is the query which was there, and if we run this query, it basically what happens is that if you notice, there's a node here, right? Node, node, node. The node is the center part of all Gatsby systems, right? Any data which you have, which you pull into Gatsby, you're going to model it as a node, right? It could be an image or whatever, right? And here, the node in Gatsby have certain fixed elements like an ID, and then there would be an internal set of fields which will specify, let's say, what kind of node it is, right? And plugin authors who are pulling data can actually modify this data when they're putting in the data in there. So, okay, so to make things simple, basically what this query does is it queries for all Markdown remark. Within that, we basically pull out all the nodes which have the Markdown, and we had three Markdown files. So these are 3 nodes, and for each of them, if you remember our Markdown, it had a title in there, and it had an image, right? So we just take the title from there, from the front matter, and we pass that as props to our React component. And our React component, we just go in there, we just do all Markdown remark dot edges, or rather we just take the array, we map on the array, and say dot node dot ID and dot front matter dot title and print that, right? So it's pretty simple. You can just pull out any data you want from using GraphQL, and every component has got access to the entire data set of Gatsby, right? So from any component, you can pull out any data you want and work on that data. Okay, so now let's make it a little bit more interesting. We'll just keep raising the bar as we go. Okay, now let us try and get some images going in here, right? How much time we have? 10 minutes left? Okay. Okay, so let us. No, that's fine. Okay, so now we'll try, instead of title, we'll put in some images in here. So anybody has, I'll just take some questions here quickly because we don't have much time. Anybody has questions till now?
So what is the problem what Gatsby is going to solve? Like why Gatsby?
Excellent question. And just hold on to that question, right? Hold on to the question. It's an excellent question. Okay, anybody else, any other questions specific to what we're doing? But that question, if I start speaking, I'll not stop. So that's why I just want to just complete this. Okay, so now I'm going to get this another index.js file here, where essentially we query the. So now in this file, when you're doing a query, we're also just basically querying for the image, right? Other than that's the only difference. We just change the GraphQL query and say also get the image in here. And one neat thing about Gatsby is Gatsby's image processing library, right? The image processing library is so cool that you can have any image on your file system, and you just, while querying it, you just say what dimensions you need, right? And it kind of produces a responsive image for you, right? So it's like damn cool, anyways. Okay, so okay. So we got this in here. I'll just move a little faster. Okay, so what we want to do before I just want to speed it up a little bit, right? So what we want to do now is that we want that in our main blog page where titles are there the images come. I showed you how we do that. We just do update the GraphQL query with the images which you need to pull with the image processing library, and then we want that when we click on each of those links, right, on the main page, we want that it opens up a new page, right? So in our Gatsby blog starter, in our pages directory, whatever files we put in there, those files become pages, right? Yeah, so those files become pages. Now, for our markdowns, right, we want that we can either put an index.js in each of those folders, and that index.js will basically query the markdown which is there and display that, or we can dynamically generate those pages. For each of the markdown, we can dynamically generate a page. Now, when we dynamically generate a page, we also need to dynamically generate the URL of the page, right? And Gatsby can do that. Gatsby can dynamically generate the URL of the page and the page itself. And to do that, it has a bunch. I mean, to do more than that also, it has a bunch of lifecycle APIs, right? But for doing that, we just need two APIs. One is called onCreateNode. That is, when we create each node in the Gatsby system, we want to also say that, okay, for this node, this is a slug, right? So when we create the markdown remark node, we want to put in a slug in there, saying that this particular node is going to be the URL for the node, or whatever you want to put right there. That's one thing. So for that, we use an API called onCreateNode. And then for creating the pages dynamically, there's an API called onCreatePages, where you can do any query on the GraphQL data layer, and you just pass it on to the create page, pass on the props and the slug, and it creates pages for you dynamically, right? So I'll just show you how that's in the code. Okay, so this file is basically the Gatsby node.js file. So there are a couple of Gatsby in the main home directory of Gatsby. There are a couple of files which can be used for Gatsby's configuration, and this is one of the files where we can do the node APIs. So in this file, if you see, this is one of the lifecycle function which will call on the Gatsby build lifecycle on create node. So here what we are saying is that when you're creating a node, after every node you create, you invoke this function, and here we check that is this node of a type markdown remark? And if it is of markdown remark, then what is the directory in which it is? And let the directory be a slug, right? Simple as that, right? So we say that now we have it in pages slash Dayara Bugyal, for example. So slash Dayara Bugyal is a slug, right? And we insert that into our data layer. We say, okay, create a node field called slug in a data layer. Now, when you query GraphQL, you'll be able to see that. That is the first thing we did. And the next thing below this, which we are doing is, we are dynamically generating the pages, right? So what we do here, if you notice, we are running a GraphQL query here, saying let's query all the files which are remark files, and for each file, we want the time to read, which is automatically calculated by GraphQL based on the number of characters in the remark file. We want the title, we want the slug, which we just showed how it's created. And then we take that array of which we get from GraphQL, and we pass it on to the Gatsby API called create page. And on that we say, okay, create this page at this slug using this component. I'll just show what this component is, and pass in this slug as a prop, right? Once we do this, Gatsby automatically will take the component, pass in the props, and create the page at that particular URL, right? So what is that? How does that component look like? So let us get that component in here as well. So for that, Gatsby has something called templates, and that is in a special directory called the template directory, which we just made now. And within this templates directory, we will copy this component, which is a template component. Okay, so we copy this template component here, and if you look into the template component, it's basically a simple component where in this, the data is actually the props, and the path context is what is passed on when you do a create pages, right? So this path context has the slug, and this data is coming from the GraphQL query below, which has the markdown remark, the set of posts, right? And it just goes in like a normal React component. It goes and just renders that, right? So this is the query. So we pass in the slug, right, as a prop. So in GraphQL, we can actually say that, okay, this is the slug which we have passed in as a prop, and we say, okay, we want just that file which is equivalent to, which has a slug which is equal to that. So it just pulls that remark file, and we just for each page we have data for just for that page, right? So with this, I think most of our blog should be complete. We have generated the pages dynamically, and I think, yeah, let me just check if I've missed any file. Yes, we got the template going. Okay, and okay, so here I've got, since we updated the slug, so I just need to get a new index.image which actually points to that slug. So I just update, I'll just show you what I'm updating. Done. Okay, so what I did was here is that I copied this index.js again, because in this index.js I just updated the slug which we added earlier, right? Now this is our main page. On the main page we just want to know the, when you click the link, where do we go? So I just updated that part here, nothing else. And now let us run this and see. Hopefully we have everything in place. So now Gatsby is starting up, and it's running the queries, it's getting the images, and it's getting the images, it is resizing the images, and it's up, right? And here we go, here's the blog site. We have all our treks in here. You click on the trek, and then it opens the page which was dynamically generated. And if you look at the string is what the directory was, right? Now the blog post is ready. Now I'll tell you another very really cool thing about this, right? Now to deploy it, now we have a static site ready. Netlify is a service by which we can do a lot of stuff. But what we are going to do out here is that I'll just take 5 minutes more, right? What I'm going to do here, we made a static site, right? We made a static blog site using Markdowns, right? Now, I think one of the big problems which we have is that for a static site, right, we need some kind of automation, right? We want that the moment we publish a blog, it should get published, right? I don't want to do any other work of doing a build and all of that stuff, right? And that's where Netlify comes in, right? What we do with Netlify, we just connect Netlify to our database, to our Git repository, which has the files, and we just keep pushing our Markdown files to Remark, and Netlify keeps publishing it. So, has a publisher or as a developer, the only thing which you need to do is just write the Markdown files and push it to GitHub, and your Markdown files automatically get published to the internet, right? So that's what you're going to do here, right? So what we'll do here, we'll say, let's create. So I got this already on Git, right? This code which I showed you, I already have it on Git. So I'm just going to show how it happens here. So I'm saying that create a new site from 0 to hero. Okay, 3 easy steps to get your site on Netlify. So we'll do continuous deployment. We'll say GitHub. Let's connect it to GitHub. And so I got this as a Gatsby blog starter. And I've got the stuff actually on the blog posts branch. And this is the command is Netlify going to run, Gatsby build. And I say deploy site, right? Now what Netlify is going to do is going to go into GitHub, pick up the entire Git repository, and it will compile the Git repository, and it will publish it on the internet. So anybody can access it, right? And that's what it's doing right now here. Now if you go in here Netlify is working. It has gone, picked up the build from the repository we said, and it's fetching the packages and building it, right? So while it's building it, it'll just take a minute more for it to build. While it's building it, what we'll do is Oops. Okay, so it looks like the build on Netlify failed for some reason because maybe I pulled out the wrong repository on GitHub. And since I'm running out of time, I don't want to take somebody else's time to correct this problem, right? So, but I would just answer his question. So it also completes what I want to show here, right? So the question was that why should anybody use Gatsby, right? And 2 minutes more, Kiran. Yeah? Okay. So the thing is that Gatsby is a static site generator. That's what people call. I don't like to call it static site generator, but that's what people say. It's a static site generator. I don't like to call it static site generators because static word means like something which is static, but it is not really static because now we are in the world of microservices, right? And I can have a static site, but my static site is actually doing API calls and getting data from any any public API or my own API and rendering stuff on my static site, on my client actually, right? So what we have is we have server rendered code ready on your static site. So your performance can't be better than what you can get, right? Because it is like server rendered code distributed across CDNs in the world, right? So you don't have to go to a particular server which is in a particular geographic location because CDNs are spread worldwide. And the code is already server rendered. So the performance is the fastest from that perspective. This is completely optimized. You don't have to worry about configuring your Webpack and your Babel and ensuring you have everything, all the chunking going on right. You have your pre-caching, your preloading, your lazy loading, all of that. You don't have to worry about that. That comes out of the box, right? So you get all of that ready-made. And so the performance is now a notch higher. Now, not only do you have server rendered, plus geographically easy, closer, plus the best optimized JavaScript site. That's the first thing. The second thing is about the fact that apps are getting closer with microservices. The difference between static websites and dynamic websites is shrinking more and more. There are certain limitations right now with respect to static websites, but that is changing very fast with services like Netlify, with services like Auth0, with services like Contentful.com, where you can have your own media publishing site using Gatsby, and you have a bunch of writers who are writing stuff for you, and Gatsby just pulls it and publishes it every half an hour automatically, right? So you don't really need to spend anything. This is totally free, right? If I publish on Netlify with whatever CDNs it gets, it's totally free. So that's why, I mean, there are a lot of blog posts on that as to why this is really good for the next billion users, right? So that's why I'm very excited about this. All right, and finally, the creator of Gatsby, right? The guy who created Gatsby, just want to show his face as well here, because then I'm done with my talk. So he's Kyle Matthews, and he's the guy who created Gatsby, right? Okay, thank you very much.